has an enormous shortfall in revenues. This fiscal year, which ends June 30th, we're projecting a $2.4 million shortfall. We are able to deal with that by delaying some capital improvement projects and taking other steps to make our budget balanced for this fiscal year. Next fiscal year starts July 1st, and we're projecting a $6 million shortfall. And we'll be meeting in closed session tomorrow to talk about some measures. And in May, we need to come up with a balanced budget that starts with the next fiscal year. It's going to be challenging, but we have some ideas of how to be creative about minimizing the impact to the coast side, but it's going to be significant no matter what we do. Those are all the bad news. There's some good news that at yesterday's City Council meeting, we approved a project to do vertical access at Poplar Beach. You probably know that it's pretty dangerous up to now. It's been slippery, hard to get down, especially for old people like me. But the new project will involve steps and a rail, and we're going to take advantage of the fact that people shouldn't be on the beach right now to complete that project within 3 or 4 weeks. So that should make it a little easier to get down to the beach when you're allowed there. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Anyone on the council with questions for Harvey?
Yes. Harvey, could you talk a little bit about what happened at the COVID study session as well, please?
Yeah, there were a lot of reports from our census team, from the Coastside Collaborative, the sheriff gave a report about citations that have been handed out for people coming to the coastside who have traveled more than 5 miles, which is violating the health order. There was some discussion about whether or not we should encourage the sheriff to actually hand out citations in addition to the warnings. Nothing was decided about that. Those are some of the highlights that I can remember off the top of my head. Do you have any particular questions that I could answer?
Nope, that was basically what I wanted. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Harvey.
Len, I have a question for Harvey.
Go ahead.
Harvey, thanks for your presentation there. I wanted to ask about the vertical access at Poplar Beach. What material do you know? Do you know how it's going to be built? Can you tell us a little bit more details about how it will fit into the natural environment?
I believe it's going to be wooden steps with a railing on at least one side. But I can't give you more details than that. But the RFP has gone out already, and if you go to the Half Moon Bay website, you can get more information.
Okay, can I just make just a quick comment that the steps at Surfers Beach, there's a little no-slip rail that was put on each. Apparently they did not use stainless steel screws to screw it in place. A lot of them rusted out and broke off, and they're bouncing around on the stones there. So I just wanted to put a little early up front request that it's the hardware is done with stainless steel, so that they don't have that problem.
I will certainly pass that on to Public Works. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Okay. I don't recognize any other public officials who want to speak at this point. So next, we have public comments from items not on the agenda.
We have a request from Sabrina to speak.
Yeah, I know, I've got that. So I have currently one speaker request from Sabrina Brennan, who I'll call on shortly. If there's any other member of the audience who wants to speak, please send in a chat message. Okay, so Sabrina.
We can't hear you, Sabrina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Lynn, I'm sorry, did I just hear you say that I'm not a public official?
Well, I'm sorry, you are a member of the Harbor Commission, so I should have recognized you there, but you had your request in items not on the agenda. So, yes, you're here as a Harbor Commissioner.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I am speaking tonight specifically about things related to the San Mateo County Harbor District. And as you know, we run two facilities. One facility we manage at Oyster Point Marina, and then the second facility we own at Pillar Point Harbor. And did want to mention that we had our first discussion about our budget at our last board meeting. Obviously, things are going to be really tight. Some of the projects that we've been hoping to move forward on, it's going to be an interesting time to figure out where the money's going to come from to keep that stuff moving forward. So it would be, I think, helpful for the MCC and the public to follow that closely, because some of these projects are projects that the public has voiced strong support for. We are also experiencing more and more pressure coming from the city of South San Francisco to designate more of our budget towards projects at Oyster Point Marina, which essentially become projects that, like capital improvement projects, that the city of South San Francisco will own, because we don't own the land. Can you guys hear that?
Sorry, Sabrina. No, go ahead.
Sorry about it, Sabrina. Mistake on my side.
So the point is that if there are projects that you want the Harbor District to keep moving on, be aware that we are under increasing pressure from the city of South San Francisco to spend what little money we have on projects there. So it's kind of developing and something to track. So just pointing that out. I don't think that we're in the same bind that the city of Half Moon Bay is in, but I think all public agencies are going to be experiencing some very challenging times ahead. So secondly, I wanted to mention that recreational salmon season is going to be opening on May 1st, and it runs through November 8th. And as we all know, all of us who live on the coast side know, with salmon season comes a lot of traffic. People come from Nevada, Utah, Colorado, the Central Valley, literally all over California and states outside of California for salmon season opening. They usually show up the day before, and there's weeks of pretty intense use and a lot of challenges with parking. So we had sort of thought that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife would wait to open sports salmon season. But it looks like they've decided to go ahead and open it for May 1st and then let local agencies decide how to handle it. So in essence, the state is sort of taking a hands-off approach to the opening. So what that means is there's a lot of pressure to launch vessels. Currently, the San Mateo County Harbor District is not allowing vessels to launch from our boat launches located at Pillar Point Harbor and also at Oyster Point. So it's just an important point of information for the public to understand that our launch ramps are not open for sports fishing at this time. If you have a commercial fishing license and you need to launch, then the Harbor Patrol will allow you to launch so long as you're a commercial fisherman. And then obviously if you have a boat which is docked at Pillar Point Harbor and you want to go out and do commercial fishing, you have a commercial license. Commercial fishing is something that that we're allowing and facilitating. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that the parking lots at Pillar Point Harbor are still closed. So they've been closed for weeks, and they're going to remain closed. As you guys have probably noticed, that means that more people are parking along Highway 1, and that sort of brings up the issue of the fact that some people, unfortunately, are not following the governor's order with shelter in place and staying 5 miles from their home. We have people with their families and extended families who are driving out to the coast side, which has created some challenges on public beaches and with parking issues along the coast side. And I think Harvey already alluded to that in his earlier comments. So that's pretty much all I've got. I just wanted to bring up those issues. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sabrina. We also have...
Question for Sabrina? I have a question for Sabrina.
Okay, Dan?
Yes, thank you, Sabrina. Question about the, the harbor being closed. We know that up and down the coast, there's a lot of small businesses that are getting, hurt real bad. At the last Harbor Commission meeting, I mentioned that, there's a little bit of a confusion with a big sign saying the harbor is closed, and then the fish market is open. The harbor closed sign is pretty loud. It stands out there. I understand, the position, but I'm just like to hear from you if there's some thoughts that you have regarding trying to help the local businesses, the Princeton Seafood Restaurant, the fish market. I understand they are open, correct? The sign's up there, but it's a problem that there's no place to park. And anyway, I just wanted to hear if there's been any discussion about this on your end, and if you have any comments. But by the way, just so everybody knows, I'm experiencing some video feedback. It's not I'm able to live with it. I'm wondering if anybody else is, but I'll just say that.
Okay.
So, Sabrina, can you?
Yeah,
Sabrina,
I can.
go ahead.
If it's okay, I can respond to that. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. So yeah, it is a very difficult time for small business owners, and it's not. I own a small business, so I really sympathize with what other small business owners are going through right now, and it's definitely a challenging time. First time I've ever applied for unemployment in my life, and I think a lot of people are going through that right now. But anyway, yeah, so we've got one business that I'm aware of that's open. I think we only have one right now in our concessionaire building, which is a business selling food. And then we do have, obviously, our commercial fishermen are continuing to conduct business. There are trucks that can still access the pier and pick up fish and deliver fish. So that's still happening. It's been a challenge for the restaurant. It's also been a challenge for the fishermen who sell fish off their boats. And so those are the areas where there have been some significant negative impacts. There have also been some innovations. So we've also seen some local fishermen who typically just sell right off the boat. who have taken a lot of initiative and developed delivery services. And in fact, that's been working really well for crab, and crab season started late this year, and that's been working out great. So we've got fishermen who are text messaging their customers when they're coming in on their boats and saying, hey, bringing in crab, you know, do you want to buy any? And then they're putting together a list of addresses, and then they're packing up the crab and delivering it to your home, essentially. I've had crab delivered twice now, and the crab's live. It's super fresh, just came in. The crab size is big this season. It's been awesome. So that is a nice alternative. I don't have a solution for people who want to sell off the boats and don't want to do delivery, or don't want to pair up with a delivery service and don't want to deal with fish processing or any of that.
But my concern specifically is that big sign that says the harbor is closed. Can it, has there been any discussion? Is there any way to say that, a little bit more specific, launching is not allowed, or, by saying the harbor is closed, that's, that just, people just drive by, and it sets in their mind.
Dan, there's really only one business that is open in the concessionaire building that I'm aware of, and no one else is open. All the commercial fishermen are doing their business, but it's not a business that's open to the public, because we're not allowing fish to be sold off the boats right now because we don't have enough space to allow for 6-foot distancing. And so there's really only one business that's open, and because we don't have parking for that business, it's really probably better for people to do delivery service at this point. Now, whether or not that business is doing delivery, I have no idea.
Well, I understand that, but by saying the harbor's closed, it says that deliveries, your average person, it shuts down the whole concept of even doing any deliveries.
Dan, you've asked your question, but this really isn't a forum for interactive questions from the council.
Well, I've heard it. I will say that I've heard it, Dan, and I will bring it up. So thank you for voicing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Okay.
Lynn, did you see we have a new request for public comment? It looks like Lynn is having difficulties right now.
Yeah, I've been kicked off and back on a couple times. As the vice chair, can I talk? Are you talking about Crystalline?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Crystalline, can you go ahead?
Michelle. I'll get to Crystalline after you.
Oh, I was going to just call on Crystalline. Let's have her go now.
Oh, hold on. My account, my computer stopped and I had to come back in. So, Crystalline, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, Crystalline, you're on the agenda for the Coastside Strong, but you had a comment on a survey that you wanted to give as well. This would be the place to speak to that. This is
yes, I wanted to give a couple of updates unrelated to the later agenda item. So the first thing is just to let everybody know that SMC San Mateo County Strong Fund is getting close to releasing its applications. If everything goes just right over the weekend, the applications will go live on Monday, and the Chamber will be sending out an email on Friday when we receive the final information. We will send out an email to everybody letting them know how the businesses and individuals can apply for those funds. So if you do not receive our email, please feel free to visit our website, hmbcoastsidechamber.com, and I'll type it into the comment section because you can freely sign up for our emails and then get that. Secondly, I wanted to let everybody know that we've been asked to provide data to the city and eventually the county and the state in regards to how tenants and landlords are handling giving businesses a break on their rent. And so we're going to send out tomorrow, start a survey asking both tenants and landlords how they're working together. Ideally, the results from the survey will be everybody's handling their business and they're coming to mutual agreements and no legislation needs to come and get involved. But this will be kind of how they assess that. And then the last thing is, if you haven't heard, a project was started called Coastside Comeback, and it's coastsidecomeback.com, and it's a place where locals can go and buy gift certificates to local businesses to buy now and shop later when we're allowed to go in the stores. But it will help give the businesses infusions, and it allows people to do multiple gift card shoppings in one place versus having to go to everybody's websites. So it's coastsidecomeback.com. 100% of the proceeds go to the businesses, or you can buy gift cards at a business but then donate that gift card directly to a nonprofit to help them. So it's a very cool project. And I just wanted to let everybody know about that stuff. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chris-Lynn.
Chris-Lynn, I have a question. Len, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Barbara.
How will landlords and tenants get this survey?
We are going to email it out to everybody that's on our email list. I have a list that I've been gathering over the last couple of weeks of direct contacts with the major landlords. And so I will call them and send them the links directly, and then we will put it out on social media and on Nextdoor so that anybody who sees the link for the survey, whether they're a tenant or a landlord, they have the opportunity to fill it out. It is anonymous, so tenants and landlords don't have to worry about their information getting out and somebody getting curmudgeon-y about anything. It's anonymous. We just need the data of whether or not people are working together, not necessarily who they are.
And this will be the Midcoast and Half Moon Bay, right? Not just Half Moon Bay?
Correct, coastside-wide.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Thank
Len,
you.
I have a question for Chris-Lynn.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Chris-Lynn. My question is, you said that no legislation needs to take place in regards to the tenant-landlord situation. That implies that there's 100% satisfaction with all tenants. Is that true?
Oh, well, that's my Pollyanna view is hopefully no legislation needs to go in place. But if the survey results show that there's quite a few businesses out there or quite a few landlords out there that are being really hurt by this, and then we might need to look at creating legislation to help one or both camps. But hopefully, if what we've been hearing verbally through conversations over the last month is that, at least on our local level, most tenants and most landlords have been working it out themselves just fine. And then there's no reason to intercede if that's the case.
And that is you're talking just the tenant-landlord relationships that are members of the of your organization.
The survey's for the entire coastside. We're not separating it out from members versus non-members.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and on the survey, we're just asking people to supply their zip code. So that's how we'll be able to locate the data so that we can give proper stats to Half Moon Bay City and proper stats to any of the other jurisdictions that want it. And that's the only identifiable information is just the zip code.
Okay. Thank you, Chris-Lynn. Okay, next I'll be going to Michelle Wild to give us an update on the survey that's also being worked on, and after that, Jan Vanderstraten. So, Michelle?
Hi, guys. Yes, just wanted to give a quick update on the Midcoast survey. Hopefully you guys have seen the links to it and taken it. It's posted on the Midcoast Community Council website as well as on our Facebook page. We've had a lot of members of the community put it out on various platforms, including the Coastside Mothers Club. We've had it in the weekly email that goes out, the weekday email that went out on Monday from the Half Moon Bay Review. So we are lucky enough to have received over 400 responses so far of the English version of the survey. Unfortunately, as of earlier this week, we only had one response in the Spanish version of the survey. And so Lisa Ketchum has been helping need to get the word out, at least to the Pillar Ridge community. If anyone has any ideas of other ways to reach Spanish speakers and have more Spanish speakers take the survey, we'd really appreciate that. Also, 400 is a really good number of responses, but we still want to get more. And we are leaving the survey up for the foreseeable future. We'll talk about an end date kind of as things proceed, but we don't have a solid end date set for this right now. So if you haven't taken it or you know people who haven't taken it, please feel free to send it out to both the English and Spanish speakers.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
I have a question for Michelle.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Thank you, Michelle. I wanted to see if you could go into a little more detail about how the outreach is actually being taken place. I meet people and talk to people in the community, and they have not heard about it. So,
about the survey?
Yeah. So, what, is it just,
Just let her go ahead,
face-to-face?
Oh, no, it's an online survey. I'll make sure.
I know
I'll actually.
That, but how is it getting?
Let her answer.
I'm specifying my question. Len, please.
Well, the county initially reached out to a number of people that they were in contact with. I'm not exactly sure of the list. I know just personally I've seen it come out through the Mothers Club. I also received a forward of it that came out through the school district.
Will that list be made public? That list, will it be made public?
The list, I mean, Dan, it's being posted everywhere. It was in the Half Moon Bay Review. It's on our website. Sabrina says it's not on the website, so I'll go down and double check, but it should be the third blog post down on the site. I don't know exactly.
It's the third link on the third article on the website.
I mean, it's very broad. I can ask the county if they can give us a list of who they reached out to. I don't even have that list, but the goal is to get everyone or as many people as we can in the community to take it.
Right, but how is that going to be achieved?
Dan, this isn't the back and forth at this point. I think you're
Len, excuse me, Len. I was on the original committee, and I'm not included in any of the conversations now. So I'm trying to learn for the community how this process is going to be transparent, and how are we going to know who has been contacted.
You can bring that.
We're not reaching out on an individual basis. We're reaching out like as broadly as possible, as to as many organizations as possible. I don't know if maybe through the Chamber of Commerce we can reach out. Maybe Crystalline, if you have an email that goes out, you could include it in that. It is specifically for Midcoast residents, so anyone between Miramar and Montera. But I think it was nice that the Half Moon Bay Review was able to include it. Anyone who has a broad list of people that they can send it to should be able to, help us send this out. We're trying to be as transparent as possible. We're trying to get as many people as possible to take it.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Next, we have Jen Vanderstraten, who had a comment to make. Jen, are you on? Have to see if he's there.
Jen, you may have to unmute yourself first.
It looks like he's muted.
Yes.
So I just got back. I was dropped. I don't know why.
But Dan, we've moved on to another speaker now.
Hello, Len.
I'm sorry.
Something happened. I was talking, and I just wanted to finish.
We'll come back to you, Dan.
Okay.
We're trying to
Can
find
you
out.
hear me? Can you
yes,
guys hear
I
me?
just unmuted Jen.
Thank you.
Go
Sorry. Hi, I'm a bit new to this, so thank you for letting me speak, and my video, strangely, is not working. I wanted to quickly bring up the traffic on Cyprus just west of Route 1. I know there's probably been previous conversation about this, but I am one of the 6 or 7 homes that live right off Route 1. And as you guys might know, the traffic is really fast and horrendous. There are 6 children under the age of 8 who live within that immediate stretch. And I don't know what we can do, but people are driving down this road like 60 miles an hour. And I think with shelter in place, is even more traffic, foot traffic. And I do think all the cars and the people who do slow down when they do see people. But, I have an 8-year-old, a husband, and a dog. And and I know that there's long-term plans with big wave projects, but I'm curious as to what we can do in the interim. Speed bumps, I don't know, a traffic meter, I don't know what it is, or a sheriff, but the previous owners of our house actually built a round driveway because their son was T-boned backing into the street.
So I think just to be clear, you're asking if there are any very near-term traffic calming things that could be done on Cyprus itself for speeding there?
Correct.
Okay, that's something to take note of, and we can talk to the sheriff and DPW about that.
And Jen, to clarify, this is the stretch between Highway 1 and Airport?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen. I just wanted to echo those concerns living in the same area. I definitely see the same thing, Len. I think it would be great if we could get the sheriff to do some more enforcement as a very near-term measure.
Okay, thank you. Dan, you've come back on. Did you have another comment? We'll assume that's a no. Okay, so that closes the
Hold on,
public.
sorry. Hello, can you hear me now? Sorry.
I can now.
I just wanted to finish with Michelle that...
yeah, if you could be specific, Dan, you're carrying this on as a council conversation, which really doesn't belong here, but so be brief.
It's, just to summarize, it sounds like, this hoping to reach out to a broad section of the community. It's a hope we can situation. And I understand that it's not an easy task. I understand that. But I think that it's very important that every effort is taken to see that every person in the community has an opportunity to do the survey. So I'm going to continue to make these statements because whatever comes out of the survey will be long-lasting and have long effects to the community, and everybody will be impacted. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have the minutes for our last meeting, April 8th, for approval. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Could you call roll, Claire?
Len Erickson?
Yes.
Len? Dan Haggerty?
Yes.
Barbara Mathewson?
Yes.
And Dave Olson?
Yes.
Michelle Weil?
Yes.
I vote yes, so it's 6-0. Approving.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Okay, we're moving next to the regular agenda. The first item on our agenda is Sean McFetridge, the superintendent of the Cabrillo Unified School District, to give us an update on his overall operation in face of the challenges it has faced. Sean, are you on now?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak tonight, Len. And just as a point of order, I reached out to Len when I was presenting to City Council for Half Moon Bay last month and asked Len if he would like an update on Cabrillo Unified School District at this time. March 13, as most people are aware, was the last day of school for us where students were actually attending at our campuses, and we've been in remote learning until then. For 2 days, teachers worked together to plan what was a daunting challenge, something that none of us have ever been really fully trained for in the decades of education that many of us have worked. And remote learning started. There have been certainly a lot of things that we've learned and certainly hiccups, but I want to acknowledge that our staff, I think, have risen to the occasion. Teachers have worked to check in with students and families and try to provide some consistency and some remote learning to keep students engaged during this time. Our food service workers continue to provide meals to families who need them, and that happens at Hatch Elementary School, at El Granada Elementary School, at Moonridge Apartments, and also recently began serving at Pillar Ridge Apartments. And the last I checked this week, there were over 200 families who came in and students that came and took us up on that. And so we're happy that we're able to provide some food and some remote learning during this time. Employees are still working as essential workers on an as-needed basis, many of them remotely. Some of them actually coming in. Our custodians are working to systematically, site by site, start doing deeper disinfecting, and our technology workers clearly are working. We did put a survey out to families several weeks ago asking about technology access, if they had the laptops that they required, and internet access. Internet access is particularly challenging on the coast side because there are some areas where if we provide a hotspot, for example, cellular coverage is a challenge. We were just on the phone, many superintendents last week in San Mateo County with Congresswoman Jackie Spear. I know that the California Department of Education and the state of California are currently working with internet cellular providers to try to see if we can do more on that. We were particularly working with Moonridge, and I did have a discussion with Midpen about Moonridge and Main Street housing and their access. And so it has just been a very challenging time. It certainly reveals the inequities and digital divide that is common up and down the state in all districts. So that is one issue that we've dealt with. But of course, we had spring break. It wasn't much of a spring break. Many of us were still working during spring break, albeit remotely. But during this time of shelter in our homes, I think teachers just continue to sort of build their muscles as far as remote learning to provide more structure to student and family days. On our website, we have posted, and this was the subject of my letter last week, remote learning guides for families to provide additional materials for families should they want them for additional enrichment or remote learning, teaching at home. And our staff and our teachers have been provided with remote learning guides as well. And so what we do know is that since the time that we originally closed campuses and started remote learning, is that several weeks ago the governor said, and so did the state superintendent of instruction, Tony Thurmond, that we couldn't expect to remain open and probably wouldn't be open for the rest of the school year. And in concert and in coordination with the San Mateo County Office of Education and all of the Bay Area districts, including Santa Clara, Contra Costa, Alameda County, San Francisco, we all made the decision to, as a local control decision, but as one that was a coordinated decision in all the Bay Area counties to announced that we would not be returning to school sites for the remainder of the year. So remote learning will be our new normal. It is a weird new normal. Again, it is one that's unprecedented for us, but we think that we will get better at it. We are getting better at it, and I've been heartened by people emailing us or in PTO meetings that I've attended virtually. I think there's an appreciation for educators in schools now more than ever, particularly because I think families are having a challenging time of doing this. This is nothing like what we're used to. So my thoughts go to families and to our staff and to the Coastside community at this time. This week, I see on your next agenda about Connect the Coastside, we did put out a survey on request from Jack Nunez, who reached out to us, and we did put out a survey, a message in English and Spanish to help with the Connect the Coastside survey efforts. And we are trying to keep business operations running and continue to meet some of our goals. We had a board meeting last week. We got board approval for a new copier system throughout the district. Ours was old and falling apart. And a new phone system, which was very antiquated and was the manufacturer, I don't believe, was even in business anymore and was costing us an inordinate amount of money to upkeep. So we will be working on a new phone system, new copier system. The board also approved a new bond issuance, and this probably applies to what's on the agenda, is about the impact on Midcoast school improvement projects. As I presented to the Midcoast Council last time I presented to you, we were engaging in a new facilities master plan, which had not been done in 7-8 years, and that is now has resulted in new plans for El Granada Elementary School and for Longview Elementary School. Those plans did take feedback from the public, from the communities we serve there, the families and the staff and neighbors. And we have worked on those plans with architects, and now those architects are now arranging the next set of meetings to show those plans to communities, the school communities at Fair Longview and El Granada, upon which time, after that review, it will go to the board, and hopefully we can start the process with a new bond issuance of getting architectural drawings, going out to bid, and getting construction estimates and construction bids out there so that we can begin the construction of new buildings at El Granada and at Fair Longview that would replace buildings that are past their usable life. There are several portables, modular buildings on both those campuses that are, as I said to the Midcoast Council last time we spoke, really sort of falling apart. And so those will be replaced. There will be new buildings built, and the buildings with good bones, stick construction, will be modernized and renovated. The Hatch Elementary School project is ongoing. The board passed a emergency essential worker resolution so that work could continue on the new kindergarten building. So that is continuing to be underway. The Cunha Building C HVAC upgrades are continuing. At the last board meeting, we also had 4 new curricular adoptions approved. So we are still trying to take care of business as far as the operations of the district. And I think the Midcoast School Improvement Projects, hopefully those will continue to be underway. As far as summer school, that's another thing that's on the agenda. That really depends on what the county health doctor, the San Mateo County Health Department, and the San Mateo County of Office of Education and the other counties decide whether or not we will be able to run summer school. Typically, we run Big Lift, and we run extended school year for students with individual education plans, and we run classes for English language learners. And so that may be a hybrid model. It may be a normal summer school offering. That is still something that we're talking about with our colleagues in the county and with Big Lift. And so we'll have to stay tuned and see what that results in. So as odd a time and as scary a time as this is, we keep trying to provide remote learning. We keep trying to provide food service to those who need it in 4 locations along up and down the coastside. And we keep trying to keep the technology running and keep trying to work on that. So I'm happy to take any questions at this time. That probably might be more useful for you, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview of where we're at.
Thanks for the update, Sean. First, are there any members of the council who would like to have questions? I'm just going to go down by name.
Like to ask one.
Yeah, I'll just go by name. First, okay. Michelle, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time. Thanks for that update, Sean.
Sure. Claire?
Thanks, Sean. I think I heard you say that part of the process for upgrading the 2 Midcoast schools would involve a bond issuance. Did I hear that correctly? I was under the impression that those projects were covered by the recent bond.
Thank you for clarifying that. When we say bond issuance, we mean we have to go back out to get our next what's the word, our next tranche, or I don't know this word, our next installment of an existing bond. So we would not be flying a new bond. This is just a process we do to be able to use the bond that currently exists. So there is no new bond.
Thank you. Barbara? Barbara, I think you're...
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dan? Dan, any questions?
Yes. I just got back on. Pre-conference call dropped me, it looks like 5 times already during this meeting. Sean, I just was curious. I understand you said that the county, Jackie Nunez, contacted you to help with the Connect the Coastside survey. And so my specific question to you is, how are you going to, respond to that? I'm assuming, but I just wanted to confirm you have an email list of all of your staff and all of your parents that have provided emails. I don't know if you have emails for every single parent, but is that essentially how you're going to handle that? Send out a blast email to staff and parents?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. We use School Messenger and email to get most of our communications out to families. And Jackie had provided me a link to surveys in English and Spanish, which is important because the majority of our students are Latino, so you have many Hispanohablante Spanish speakers. And so on Monday, we used School Messenger, I believe, and made a blast to all families and all staff. Originally, the question was asked to me, well, do we want to just do this to our Midcoast residents? But knowing that it is a survey that is also for people who work on the Midcoast, but who may live in Half Moon Bay or, et cetera, or may work at one of our schools but don't live in the area, we just push that out to all families and staff. And Jackie Nunez reported to me that very day on Monday, thank you so much. They'd already seen an uptick in 300 survey responses on that day. So we cast as wide a net as we do with all my superintendent's letters, all our district communications. We push that survey out with the links to the survey to all families and all staff members.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm assuming that you probably don't have in your system a confirmation that messages were received. They were just sent out. Is there any? I'm trying to stay on top of technology, but is that fair to say that emails go out, but you have no confirmation that everyone was read?
No, well, School Messenger actually is a product we can check if these are received. Our own survey on technology, it was the same thing. We put out the survey and we got responses, and when we didn't get responses, we pushed the survey again. For something like this that isn't our own survey, we will push it once because we don't want to push too many times because there's sometimes fatigue from people with the number of surveys, and in fact, Jackie was kind enough to understand that I waited 2 weeks because when she originally asked for it, it would have been during our spring break, and then the next week there was a flood of emails, so that's how we did it this week. But we have a pretty good rate of people picking these up. Of course, we'll never know if everyone surveys, nor would we require that if everyone, especially because it's not our survey.
Thank you, Sean.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Dave, did you have any questions?
Nothing from me.
Okay. I don't see any requests that have come in with questions from the audience. If there are, you can send a chat or just speak up right now. Okay, very good. Look, thanks for coming and speaking to the meeting, Sean.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you so much for the work that you all do.
Okay, so next we're going to move into Agenda 4B. This is an update on Connect the Coast Side. A couple of points here just to introduce it. Joe LeClaire will be speaking, and the particular point of emphasis here is some adjustments to some of the highway plans that relate to support of the Cypress Point project, as well as a longer-term look at the intersection of Carlos or 16th Street and State Route 1. Joe is going to give us an update on what those considerations are. They're actually in process, and it'll be open for discussion on how that relates particularly to the county's interest in State Route 1 as it goes through Beach, crossings, and other things. It will not be a particular update as far as the Cypress Point project goes. Joe may have visibility, but that's something that would come at a later date. So at this point, Joe, I'll turn the meeting over to you to speak. And I think Dave has your slides queued up.
Thank you very much, Len, and thank you, council members, for giving me an opportunity to speak to you tonight. First, I want to give a shout out to Michelle and to your prior speaker, Sean. I really appreciate the effort that they've made to distribute the survey that Dan was just asking about. It's really remarkable that we've been able to get over 400 responses to the survey. And I suspect that we will get more as time goes on. And we intend to, as Michelle mentioned, keep the survey open. And we also want to improve our outreach to Spanish speakers. We managed to get 8 or 10 responses from Spanish speakers, and we really need to increase that number. So we're going to be working with local organizations with connections to those folks who can really help us get better access. And we've gotten really diverse responses from throughout the community, from all the coastside communities. We've had a handful of visitors fill out the survey, and we think that their perspective is important too, as well as workers, as Sean was mentioning, getting the perspective of people who may not live in the Midcoast but do work there. So it's although it's only about 3% of the population of the Midcoast that has responded so far, it's really a remarkable response rate for a survey. I've done lots of surveys, and this one is one of the most successful. So I'm really, really impressed by that. And one of the things that Len asked me to mention briefly, too, was the planning for virtual meetings. So we're currently looking at tentative dates in May. We're looking at Saturday afternoons so that most people will be able to participate, won't be compromised by work. And so we're looking at May 16th, the 30th, and June the 6th. And the idea behind those meetings is to have a overview meeting to begin with, and then have two meetings that focus on geographic areas. So the first meeting would, well, one of the meetings, whether it's first or not, would be Moss Beach and Montera, and the other meeting would be the El Granada, Miramar, and Princeton areas. And that will give us a chance to really drill down on the specifics of what's proposed in those areas and give people a better chance to comment on more specific proposals. But I also wanted to spend a little time tonight talking about, and I wanted to mention too, that we have contracted with our lead facilitator, Debbie Schechter, for those meetings. Today we finalized that contract, and so we're excited to be working with her to plan those meetings. And also we've had a new staff member join our team. Her name is Chanda Singh, and she's a senior transportation planner, came to us from LA County, and we're very excited to have her join the team, and she'll be really an asset going forward in our efforts to wrap up Connect the Coast side. So now I'd like to talk to the slides and some of our preliminary ideas for interim traffic solutions in the Moss Beach corridor to address some of the traffic issues that will arise from the Cypress Point project. As Len mentioned, we'll also, in Connect the Coast side, have longer-term improvements planned for this corridor because there's the cumulative impact of additional development on the coast side that needs to be addressed. And so these interim improvements would eventually be overwhelmed by the additional traffic that would accompany that further development. So with that, could I have the next slide, please? Or do I get to advance them?
No, I think Deb will advance it.
Okay, thank you.
Oops.
But I really do just want to thank everyone who's helped with the survey. It's been really remarkable to see how good a response we've gotten. And the responses are varied, and that'll really be helpful. And we'll, like I said, we'll be able to share with you at your next meeting where people accessed the survey from, whether it was the Planning and Building website or the MCC website, or we've had a lot of help pushing it out from like Crystalline, who spoke with you earlier tonight, is helping us to distribute it. So there's quite a bit of help with that. Thank you, Dan. So this slide shows the corridor, and in general terms, what we have in mind in the interim are some sidewalk improvements between, say, the Cypress Point project site and downtown Moss Beach. We are looking at modified turning movements at Carlos and Highway 1, a signal in the interim at California, and bus improvements at California Avenue stops along Etheldor. Next slide, please. So first, just looking at the sidewalk improvements, we're focusing on the gray line there, the sort of Sierra Stetson, California to Etheldor route. It's a wee bit shorter than Carlos, and there already are existing sidewalks along that entire route except for a couple of gaps that need to be filled. So we expect there would be some handicap ramps that would need to be upgraded, some crosswalks striped. But overall, you can see it's within the sort of rubric or metric of half a mile is about as far as people are expected to be willing to walk to transit, and it fits within that within that rubric. And so we think that by making some modest improvements, that'll make the use of the transit greater. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I'm having some problems for some reason.
No worries. Thank you. So we're also looking at California Avenue, making some changes at California Avenue in the interim, and that would involve the installation of a traffic signal there, because
Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt, but don't you have to go through a process to either choose a signal or a roundabout, or is that automatically going to be a signal?
Well, we think that the time it will take to get a roundabout in place will necessitate a temporary signal there. That securing the funding for a roundabout will take a year or two, and so we think that the likely timing of, if all goes as planned, of course we have no idea for sure how long it would take the Cypress Point project to be built out and create the need for the traffic improvements. But assuming that they were able to complete that in the next 2 or 3 years, we're not convinced that we'd be able to design, fund, and build a roundabout in that time frame. And so that's why we're looking at a signal. Now, what Len is referring to is a process called intersection control evaluation. That's a requirement by Caltrans. And so we have a preliminary draft ICE intersection control evaluation for California Avenue and Highway 1 that evaluates both a signal and a roundabout and concludes that a roundabout is feasible. It's going to require some changes to either the roundabout or the signal would require changes to the terminus of Winky Way because of the way it meets California now is not possible in a roundabout configuration or a signal. So, but in any case, I don't know for sure whether Caltrans would go along with a signal at this location. So that is something that we will have to explore with them. I can report that we have entered into a cooperative agreement with Caltrans to study the improvements in the Moss Beach corridor. So looking at potentially 3 roundabouts at 16th, at California, and at Cyprus, although we're having second thoughts about the need for the roundabout at 16th. There may not be enough trips at that location to warrant a roundabout or a signal. It may be that the level of service and the trips, the delay and the number of trips that would be at that intersection would be low enough that it could be stop controlled. And but we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, we have entered into this cooperative agreement with Caltrans in order to prepare what are called project study reports that are necessary in order to position these projects for funding, and also to build anything, whether it's so the ICE analysis is a precursor to a project study report that is necessary in order to put in a signal or to put in a roundabout, either one. So an ICE analysis, an intersection control evaluation that weighs whether or not a signal or a roundabout is appropriate is a component of that larger study. And so Caltrans, we have to pay Caltrans to look over our shoulder and make sure that we prepare these reports in a manner that meets with their standards. So at this location, we're looking at possibly reconfiguring Winky either to be a T intersection with California, which is problematic because we would need to acquire property from the Latter-day Saints Church, or closing it off and having those turning movements moved to the north. And so next slide, please. And this just shows that layout as it is now in the aerial photograph. And I want to mention, too, that part of the long-range planning for the Moss Beach corridor is to locate the parallel trail adjacent to Highway 1, basically in between Carlos Avenue and Highway 1 in the Caltrans right-of-way through this corridor. And there's sufficient room, but it may involve converting this segment of Carlos into a one-way southbound, because of the inability to safely make left turns out of a roundabout onto Carlos, because of the separator that's needed at the entry to a roundabout in the vicinity. So we think that gives room, and there's also red-legged frogs in this ditch that adjoins Highway 1, which are an endangered species. So we wouldn't be able probably to, impact them in any way. So those are just some other considerations. Again, we'll be covering these in greater detail when we have our virtual public meetings to address Connect the Coast side. But I just wanted to share those ideas while we're focused on this area. Next slide, please. So looking at Carlos Street turning movements, the problem with the Carlos Street intersection as it is now, the way it meets Highway 1, is the limited sight distance to the south. The standard is about 600 feet sight distance, and currently there's a little over 300. Looking to the south when you're facing west on Carlos, looking to turn onto Highway 1. So we're looking at various options for constraining turns at this intersection, including limiting left turns onto Carlos from southbound Highway 1 and left turns southbound from Carlos. We're looking at possibly limiting all turns except for emergency vehicles and evacuation. And we're also looking in the long term at extending, longer term, at extending Carlos to 16th to make that a cleaner intersection, because at 16th, you have the 600-foot sight distance in both directions. So those are just some of the ideas that we're exploring for Carlos and Highway 1. And I should say that these will all be supported by detailed traffic analysis and traffic counts. Next slide, please. Or is that the last slide?
That is the last one.
Oh, thank you. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And like I say, these are our preliminary ideas. We're working with our colleagues at the Department of Public Works, and we're consulting with Caltrans and also assigning some of the traffic analysis to both our consultants, DKS, and to the Cyprus Point consultants to make sure that we have rigorous analysis of the different alternatives under consideration.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe. We're moving now into a question phase. First, we're going to work with the council. I'll go through the council in sequence to give each person a chance to ask questions. If members of the audience have an interest in posing questions, if you would use chat to send me your request. I currently have one from Sabrina Brennan and another from Chris Tyler to speak as members of the audience. Okay, so first up, and we'll do...
Len, also one from Jen.
From who?
Jen.
Okay. So we're going to start with Dan Haggerty first.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say off the bat that this note about the on the MCC website was I heard it was just posted this morning. So there's a lot of people that may be very interested in this conversation that were not alerted in time. I just want to make that statement. I wanted to say if there is a signal short term, I wanted to ask about. Let me back up a little bit. I really think before we go further that the community deserves a given. An easy to understand report of the number of cars traveled, the average speed, the number of left turns in the area, at the average low peak, the average low point, medium point, and high peak. I really think that the community needs to know the facts first before we start talking about what to do about it. Second, if we do decide, Caltrans, the county, whatever, does decide to use a signal, I'd like to know there's a computer that will program the timing. It'll program, there'll be a sensor in the road, it'll signal to the computer, the controller, is there heavy dominant flow on Highway 1 at this moment when a car wants to come in and make a left, or a pedestrian wants to cross? Is there a heavy dominant flow before that light on Highway 1 turns red? How is that going to be handled? How is that going to be fair to everybody, the dominant flow, but also people that want to walk across Highway 1 or make a safe left turn? So,
Dan, you're only going to have 3 minutes total because you provide him something he can answer.
Yeah. So I'd like if you could ask, if you could answer those two main points about how is the community really understanding what the given situation is clearly, easily, in a layman's term, and then how would a signal be programmed? Because this obviously will affect everybody that uses the highway.
Yeah, thank you. Those are really good points, and we will provide the community with. This decision is not going to be made overnight. We're starting early to provide information about the ideas that we are considering. We are going to provide the community and the MCC with analysis of the, as you pointed out, the traffic counts at off-peak and peak, the turning movements. All those are absolutely necessary, as well as safety data in terms of crashes and fatalities, and those kinds of things are all factors that go into the analysis as to whether a signal is warranted or whether and what a roundabout, whether a roundabout will work, and also what the configuration of the roundabout would need to be in order to serve that traffic. And then as far as the signal timing, if it's in for, a period of time, those are exactly the kinds of things that we, the county, would want to see as well, to make sure that, and we would want community input on the nature of the signal timing. So how do we balance, as you pointed out, cross traffic and pedestrian traffic with the dominant flow of Highway 1?
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Next we'll go to Michelle.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for your presentation. I have a couple questions. The first is about the roundabout versus traffic signal. If we were to put in a traffic signal as an interim measure while we're considering and potentially raising funding for the roundabout, it seems to me like traffic signals are pretty expensive in and of themselves as a pretty big project, and just pulls funding for what a future roundabout would be. How do we justify spending that amount of money in the interim? And then my second question is around just these improvements in general and the need for some sort of signal or roundabout there. Is that contingent on the Cypress Point project being done, or has it been determined that this is already a need regardless of whether Cypress Point is built?
Thank you. So those are both really good points. And I share your concern about spending money on signal. I think a signal could cost anywhere from $600,000 to $1 million, I think, to install. So that's not a small amount of funding. And a roundabout is somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million. And I think that we were more optimistic before COVID about the roundabouts in the near term. But with COVID, everybody's budget, as we've been hearing tonight, is upside down, and we can expect more of that, going forward. So I just want to be realistic about what we can achieve in what period of time. But as far as the need is already present. So based on traffic counts that we did in 2014 and subsequently, most recently, the California already meets a signal warrant. It's deficient and therefore qualifies for some kind of intersection control.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I have two things to say. I'm actually fairly upset about this particular presentation. I was thinking that this would be about the changes we've talked about all along, about things that would serve the community, things that we've said we wanted. And it looks to me as though every single piece of what you're suggesting is designed to make the Cypress Point project doable and attractive. I mean, the sidewalks are for Cypress Point. The bus stop is geared towards Cypress Point. The roundabout that we've been asking for years and years and years is not going to happen. And I don't believe you're going to put in a light and then change it to a roundabout. It's just not going to happen. I think that I'm just disappointed. I feel like I'm in Casablanca and I'm saying, oh, there's gambling at Rick's. I guess I should have realized it, that this is not for the people of Moss Beach as we are now and what we need now. And the other piece of this is that everything has changed. I don't know if there's going to be enough traffic on Highway 1 to meet a signal warrant at California 3 months from now. I don't know what kind of money people are going to have 3 months, 6 months from now. I don't know what's actually going to be built and what isn't. I don't know what the rush is. I guess my third point is this is important. It's important we take our time and get this right. And I am concerned about virtual public comment, that we're not going to get the public comment we need to get with virtual meetings. I wish we could put this all on hold and kind of see what's actually going to happen with the economy and have it focus more on the people in Moss Beach rather than on construction projects. That's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Claire, Joe, would you like to comment?
Well, I will just say that I'm basically making the presentation I was asked to make. So if I had been asked to make a thorough presentation on all the improvements in Moss Beach, I would have happily made that presentation. And we do have a lot of ideas in Connect the Coast side for improving pedestrian, bicycle, transit movement in the corridor, as well as 2 to 3 roundabouts in the Moss Beach corridor. And we also want to see improvements to the coastal trail. So there is a number of pedestrian crossings and a wide variety of improvements that are in Connect the Coast side, and our intention is to roll those out at these virtual meetings. I agree with you about the limitations of virtual meetings. I think we're getting better at them. I will say that so far tonight, this is a lot better than the last time I participated in an MCC virtual meeting. And so I think we intend to make the virtual meetings as engaging and as informative as we possibly can. And we're trying to schedule them at times when people can participate. We're going to have a cadre of facilitators available so that we can have breakout groups so that people can really engage with the information and provide feedback. And it is unfortunate that we are likely to be in some kind of shelter-in-place order or social distancing recommendations that will prevent us for many months from having large meetings with people all in one room. And at present, the direction that we've gotten from the Board of Supervisors is to move forward with our work and not sit on this, on this and wait for healthier days. And so that's the direction that we have. But our intention, Claire, is to make a thoroughgoing presentation of all the Moss Beach improvements in our Connect the Coast side meetings.
Okay.
This was really to give a preview of...
Okay. No, you're finished? I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
I'm finished, yeah.
Okay. Next, Barbara.
Well, I've got to agree with Dan and Claire. I'm really disappointed that this ended up being a discussion that's pretty much about Mid-Penn and Cypress Point. That was not on the agenda. This presentation that was given, we should have had that in our agenda packet so we could have looked at it. I'm shocked that you're going to put a sidewalk and expect people to walk on a sidewalk up through Sierra Street up here to Stetson and then expect them to walk down that hill on California. That just, everybody walks down this street here. I live on Carlos. I think you walked this today, actually, Joe. I think I saw you. And I think you know that this Carlos is the flat street. So we certainly can't have a sidewalk here, and to expect people to, and this is a one-lane street, you see how thin it is, how narrow it is, to expect people to go out of their way, even though it may be a little bit quicker, it's a lot harder walk for a lot of people. So I just don't think that's a good idea. And also about the virtual meetings, I've got to put in my disagreement with that as well. We have right now about 20 some people in here. When this is an item on our agenda, you get 3 times that. Connect the Coast side and Cypress Point are 2 very contentious projects here, and we're just not getting out there. There should be a whole ton of people in here, but nobody knew about this. There wasn't anything posted that we were going to be talking about 16th in California. So this is all new. And I don't have any questions. Those are just comments. I'm not happy about this at all. I don't think it's fair. I feel like we've been misled again.
So let me interject here that the reason we're having this session today is because the project proposals that were going forward, especially from Cypress Point, keyed on things happening at 16th Street that were not feasible to happen in the near term. And effectively what Joe has described is the Connect the Coast Side framework put forward back in September. And it's primarily one that concerns itself with the California Avenue intersection. The demand might come from Cypress Point, but exactly how that ties to Cypress Point isn't the issue here. It's basically retrenching to the two main intersections in State SR1 in the Moss Beach area. And two things have happened in terms of what the impact here is. There had been a concern before that if we get past the amendment and it's approved and then go to the CDP, that ultimately that's not something that is appealable to the Coastal Commission. But these highway projects sort of negate that. So any final decisions made with respect to the roadway here will also mean that those are projects appealable to the Coastal Commission. That said, that the work on trying to actually state the impact and rework the Cypress Point proposal is still something in process. What we have coming up in 2 weeks, as Joe has outlined, really in about 3, is to begin to present Connect the Coast Side. So what you get here is a direction of where it's aiming itself as far as Moss Beach goes, and to take the comments you're making here. That is, if we're going ahead, there isn't any other alternative near term other than virtual meetings. So we may want to take the majority of our comments to say that we feel it's imperative to hold those off. I mean, but
well, then, Len, why wasn't this in the agenda, and why weren't we given a PDF on it so we could have looked at this before the meeting?
Because he just got it to us at about 5 o'clock today, and I felt it's better. There's no decision we're making today. It's just giving us information of current status to decide what we want to do next.
No, it makes a difference then, because people might have wanted to come and comment on this if they know it was on the agenda.
So we have
how many members were cheated?
Yeah.
So next I'm going to go to Dave, who has not had a chance to speak yet.
Whatever.
I just have the overall comment that clearly we have to go through the ICE Caltrans process, intersection control on California and anywhere else. Cost is part of the decision process, but it's not the only part of the decision process. I personally am very concerned about putting in anything that is temporary, especially something that costs over $500,000, because things that are temporary tend to become long-term. The classic example here on Midcoast on Highway 1 is the Frenchman's Creek intersection, which had a temporary signal to fix a safety problem and it was not built to Caltrans standards because it was temporary. Here it is over 20 years later, I believe, and it is still exactly the way it was originally built. So I am completely not in favor of any quote-unquote temporary solution. Other than that, thank you for the presentation. It's good data to have, and I'm sure it'll feed into the community meetings. On the virtual meeting subject, very briefly, everybody is struggling with this. Nobody is happy with it. Nobody is ever happy with virtual meetings. Even in the tech industry, people don't like them, by and large. But it is what we have, and unless MidPen is willing to delay the whole project more or less indefinitely, probably 8 to 18 months. I think the virtual meetings are the only choice we have.
Okay. So is a final comment from myself, and then we'll go to, we have 3 speakers interested in making comment from the public, and that is that what Joe has outlined is near-term virtual meetings starting in May 16th. What we probably will not have heard from by then, unless more is provided for us, is anything that really clarifies what the status of Cypress Point project is, since there were key mitigations and descriptions there that were dependent upon the 16th Street, and they haven't announced a timetable for when that comes to the Planning Commission. So I believe we should assume the county's plan is to go forward with Connect the Coast Side, really without respect to Cypress Point. That is, it's primarily dealing with the roadway itself, and that's largely what Joe described to us here. So what he's taken away from us is that we would like to hear it presented with emphasis on the Moss Beach community, not that particular project. And I think everyone has said they're interested in a presentation of that. And Joe's indicated there would even be a special meeting that would focus on the Montero-Moss Beach area. The question that we've also heard is a concern about the virtual meetings. And I believe, and I just want to ask if you're clear on this, Joe, that you're saying that's not a decision that's in your hand. If we wanted to speak to that further, I guess we would carry that to Don Horsley directly. But am I reading you correctly there?
Yes, like I said, our direction is to proceed. But before I respond to that, I just want to apologize for the lateness of the presentation arriving, and I really see this as I know that there's a lot of energy around the traffic on the coast side and the Cypress Point project in particular. So I understand that it would have been advantageous to have the information in advance. I see this really as an informal presentation of our ideas, our thinking at this time. This is not our our formal proposal, as Dave pointed out. We have to go through the ICE process, and we have to go through the preparation of a PSNR with Caltrans. And until we do that, we can't build anything or install anything on Highway 1. I mean, they can, because they do have a coastal development permit application into the county for more signage to warn people about the pedestrian crossing they installed at Virginia. But anyway, we have to go through all those processes, and our intention is to be very much engaged with the Midcoast Community Council and the public throughout this process, to get any feedback and share openly what our proposals are. And so, there will be analysis, and there will be data, and there will be drawings, and there will be opportunities for people to comment and weigh in. And mainly what this information that I shared with you tonight is our preliminary thinking of the kinds of information that would go into and be provided to the Coastal Commission for its consideration of traffic information as part of the legislative act. The actual details of the what ultimately is going to be required of MidPen, what the county may or may not build, will all be spelled out in the coastal development permit for that project. And there will be, environmental analysis, and as Len pointed out, the project would be appealable to the Coastal Commission because it will include public works projects that are appealable to the Coastal Commission. So I just wanted to say that before getting to the virtual meetings, and saying that we are under direction to proceed. We are operating under the governor's order that suspended aspects of the Brown Act and allows these kinds of meetings to go forward. They're imperfect. We had a planning commission meeting today. As I said, each meeting gets a little bit better. I hope that by the time we complete, by the time we are conducting our public meetings on the Connect the Coast side, we'll be even better at it. And if we find at the conclusion of those 3 meetings that there's a need for more opportunity for community input, then we will have more meetings.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Len, I have one more question.
No, Dan, we have speakers from the audience, so I want to give them a chance.
You cut me short earlier, Len. Len, you cut me short. Just a quick question, please. You cut me short earlier.
Quick.
Okay. Joe, you mentioned earlier that Debbie, I didn't catch her last name, is going to be contracted to kind of run the meetings. Could you tell us a little bit more? And I just wanted to agree with the other council members that in a situation where there's a known environment where there'll be reduced participation with these virtual meetings, that it really should be delayed.
So Debbie Schechter is a sole proprietor, and she was previously on the staff at the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center. She's worked extensively with the county on other public processes and has demonstrated an ability to ably serve as lead facilitator. Now, we will also have anywhere from 8 to 15 additional facilitators to manage the breakout groups in the virtual meetings, because we don't want to have more than 4 or 5 people in a room. So we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to voice their ideas and concerns or their support for the proposals.
Joe?
Thank you.
Yes.
Joe, I think it was the conflict resolution people that moderated the meeting on Cyprus Point that was held a couple of years ago at El Granada School, and that did not go very well. It might be worth sitting down and talking to this person, if she was involved in that presentation before, about how we could make sure that that it doesn't go as badly this time.
Okay. So
okay, thank you, Claire. I'll make sure to do that.
Okay. A couple of points to make clear, and I think this is aligned with what you're planning, Joe. The meetings Joe is talking about are not about Cypress Point. This meeting brought Cypress Point in because it was a driving factor to review some of the considerations that were going into Connect the Coastside's near-term framework. The second is that the meetings they're planning is trying to use the technology in a different way than we have seen it. That is, that they will take a large meeting, let's say there are 60 or 80 people, and after some group discussion and presentation, they'll be broken into separate small groups, still under the framework of the umbrella meeting. Those will be independently facilitated and then coming back together into the large group. That's a framework I haven't seen done, but the software will support that. So, but I think it doesn't sort of take away the value that people feel from the in-person meeting. So, I mean, clearly there's strong feeling about that. I have 5 requests for speakers from the audience, and the first is Sabrina Brennan. So go ahead, Sabrina.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Can you see me or just hear me?
Just hear you right now. There you are.
Okay.
I can see you.
Okay. I can't see you, Lynn, but great. So since we were just talking about the lack of transparency concerns related to online meetings, I'm not completely clear the way this has been described, what meetings we're talking about. So just so the council knows, you haven't done a very good job of explaining what these upcoming meetings are that you're so concerned with. They do sound important, and they do sound like meetings that the community will want to participate in. I, for one, am absolutely opposed to having complex online meetings about development projects that require breakout sessions in like a Zoom meeting. I don't think it's going to be workable, and especially if it's for a project that's supposed to have public benefits, such as, if there's a low income housing component, if a nonprofit's involved, for example, like MidPen, if it's some sort of a project that's supposed to benefit the public's interest, then that set of meetings should be put on hold until we can resume regular public meetings and the public can attend fully. So I am adamantly opposed to having complex online meetings about development projects. I think it's not transparent. It's outside of the governor's order or new rules. And I think that there are other public agencies that are doing everything they can to streamline their agendas and to keep it simple until a time when the public can attend public meetings, and at that point they'll get into more complex subject matter. So I think out of respect for the public, whatever these meetings are that you guys are describing, if they have to do with development projects, anything to do with highway crossings, ADA access, public safety, any of those things, that stuff needs to get put on hold until we can all show up and fully participate. So I just wanted to convey that. But back on topic, I do agree with what Dave Olson said. I think that spending the public's money, which is going to be in extreme short supply, and I cannot stress that enough, and I'm sure that Joe's aware of that, to spend our public funds on a temporary signal is completely outrageous and unacceptable. So whoever came up with that idea has not faced the reality of COVID-19, and that needs to get fixed immediately. We need a roundabout. We've been talking about roundabouts since I don't even know what year, 2008. We need the roundabouts. We need a roundabout at Cyprus as well. The sidewalk plan doesn't make sense. The mapping that we were shown was not sufficient. There was inadequate information. It wasn't clear what was being discussed. I couldn't make any sense out of the maps that were shown. There was no indication of what was what on the mapping. Totally unacceptable. I could go on and on, but I am extremely, extremely disappointed. It's just amazing to me that this is dragged on.
So your time is up on this. I have your points. Okay.
Yeah, I muted you, Sabrina. Sorry, because Len was trying to get your attention.
Okay. Have your comments. I think we have your comments. Do you want to say anything further to that, Joe?
No, I think it was a comment, and I accept that. And we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. But as I mentioned, we have direction to move forward, and I understand that people are frustrated with the a virtual format and the limitations that it imposes on us.
Okay.
And I also just want to add too that the consideration of the details of the Mid-Peninsula project will not happen at the earliest in the fall. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know whether or not the shelter in place or social distancing rules will still be in place at that time. My sense is probably, but I'm no expert. So the meetings to discuss the details of the Cypress Point project will happen in the fall.
Okay. Mike Ferreira is next. Mike, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. To explain, I'm with the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club has opposed the Cypress Point project, and the wording in their letter was they could hardly think of a worse place to put it, and that these traffic considerations were a large part of it. I guess I'm happy to see the 16th Street go away just because it was so illogical. it appears that what you want to do is to resolve the safety problem that would exist at Carlos and 1 by moving down to 16th. I'm not sure that you've completely cured the distance visibility issue there. But coming back down to California, I actually live on California, so I'm a little bit familiar with it. And I would have to say that I've never thought a roundabout was appropriate there. I agreed with the consultant, the first consultant we brought out here, called the Local Government Commission, when they would not put it at California, rather they would put it on the intersection just to the south of that, at Virginia, because it was more feasible to do a roundabout there. If you cut off Winky Way, you impact 94 homes, existing homes, 94, in order to do a project of 71. I don't think those people have been informed about that at all. I guess I could take, well, I guess I can't now. I can't go door to door now. Unfortunately. I was a planning chair in Half Moon Bay when the Caltrans brought the Frenchman Creek light. I heard them promise it was temporary. Dave is correct. It's still there. And I would guess you might have to wait another 8 to 10 years when that real intersection would be put there, and not by Caltrans, but by the city and the TA. I also have to say, Joe, that at California, my memory is that the Connect to Coast side said that it was F, condition F on an LOS, but I thought it said it did not have warrants, because warrants and F are not synonymous, because if we had to put a light at every intersection on the coast side that had condition F, it would be lit up like a Christmas tree.
Mike, so we'll have to hold your comments right there. We're trying to hold it for 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay. Next is Chris Tyler. Chris, are you still on? Chris Tyler.
Len, Chris Tyler dropped off.
Okay.
I can read his chat comments if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead and read those, please, Dave.
Okay, let me scroll back to them. Sorry. Okay, so my question is, it's 2 parts. My question is the county instituting any pause in consideration of plans based on the emergency reality of post-COVID-19 world? And let me get the other one in there before I go to Joe on it. Hold on a second, I just scrolled again. Okay. Future Cypress Point residents will not be the current target population. They will be people who lose their homes in the upcoming depression. Current target population will be even worse off. Need to rethink our future. So basically all about the COVID-19 stuff.
Okay. Said we had an email come in.
Yes, I have one from Maureen Lennon. She says, the impact through the neighborhood on Stetson and Kelmore will be a hot mess if Carlos is one way south. The whole roundabout in Signals is outrageous for a small little strip of highway in Moss Beach. Her solution, dump the Cypress Point project before they make a total nightmare in our rural community. And she just sent a follow-up. She objects to the virtual meetings. and believes that the community should submit our objection to the directions to proceed from the county until the public most affected can be represented in person.
Okay, thank you. So
quick question. Chris Tyler's comment was actually a question. I'm wondering if Joe can respond to that.
Michelle, can you remind me what the question was?
Yeah, it said, is the county instituting any pause and reconsideration of plans based on the emerging reality of post-COVID-19?
At this point, we are doing our best to continue to provide development review services to the community. So we are pausing insofar as our ability to respond is limited. We are seeing a drop-off in applications, I think in part because people are struggling to submit them. They are maybe also rethinking development projects in light of economic considerations, but we are not, in general terms, pausing on the processing of development applications at the county. So we are pressing ahead using the technology available to us as best we can. So the Planning Commission, as I said, met this morning. They approved one project for a trail that MidPenn wants to build in La Honda area, and made a general plan conformity finding around a sale of a property. So the agendas are light, but we are going ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a request for a comment from a Karen, and I can't see the full email name. Karen, are you still on?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is this Karen?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Karen.
Okay, this is Karen DeMore. I'm with Resist Density from Moss Beach, and I have a few comments to make and questions to ask. So, Joe, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned, quote, that you entered into a cooperative agreement with Caltrans to position these projects for funding, and also that you are paying Caltrans to produce these reports to meet their standards. So my question is the MidPenn project a fait accompli? It seems to me that the project's still not approved, and there are several problems that are not addressed. So where will the traffic analysis be for the additional 500 plus daily car trips that are going to be going through the neighborhood streets? Not onto Highway 1, but they're going to be going into the neighborhood streets for best access. So that's the first part. And then the second part is really for the Midcoast Community Council and this whole process. I just have as other people have mentioned, there's a real problem with this process and inclusivity. For example, right now I'm on with my telephone, but I have you on a visual call because my audio didn't work, and I'm amazed I'm actually able to talk to you right now. But the technological issue with public participation is huge, and where you're talking about these major projects that are going to affect the community for decades and generations to come, what's the rush? And what's the rush and not allow the full participation of the community that's been so involved for the last 6 years? So that's just a big question I have. I'm really concerned about the public being involved in this process. And I guess in the end, to all of you and the community that's listening, is it sounds like we have to write to the Board of Supervisors to ask them to have this process more inclusive. It was hard to get information about even this meeting tonight, and we put out an email blast, people just to say, hey, get involved and listen. So that is my feedback, and those are my questions to you, Joe LeClaire.
Thank you. So with regard to our agreement with Caltrans, it's a phased process. So first we basically fill out a form and submit it to Caltrans and say we are interested in pursuing a cooperative working arrangement with Caltrans. Then they prepare a cost estimate for their oversight, and then the Board of Supervisors would have to approve any payment to Caltrans for their oversight. So the decision on whether to formally pursue the cooperative working arrangement will be considered by the Board of Supervisors at a public meeting. And it's not finalized yet. And there will be the traffic data and analysis that you mentioned about the Cyprus Point project, as well as Connect Coastside. So these two projects are sort of moving along in parallel. There are some connections between the two, but they're also they're also moving ahead separately. I continue to understand the frustration everybody has with these virtual meetings, and we're all doing the best we can.
So a question on the point you just raised, Joe. It's clear that having Connect the Coastside and Cyprus Point, which has already exerted influence on the Connect side, sort of going on in parallel, would it be more effective for us to ask to wait till Connect the Coastside can be done in a person meeting, which might be much later in the year, or to ask that the Cypress Point project be deferred until Connect the Coastside is completed?
I think those are all legitimate requests to make. They're not mine to grant. And so I think that if that's the community's wish, you should definitely express that to the board.
Okay.
I'd like to make an additional request that Joe, can you reach out to the Board of Supervisors and see that they acknowledge that there will be a reduced participation from the community due to this situation, and just to confirm that they are okay with that?
I think that's our responsibility, Dan.
I'm asking Joe right now, and if you want to follow up as the MCC, I'm all behind it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to convey. I'm absolutely going to convey the feedback that I've gotten tonight.
Okay. Okay, well, look, Joe, I want to thank you for coming. I know you've put in a lot of effort. We have more questions,
Len.
Just a minute.
We have at least 2 or 3 more questions.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Dolores Silva, I believe.
Go ahead, Dolores.
Not from me, from Dolores, from Teresa, and from Ann.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I really appreciate what Claire had to say, and Dan and everyone else, and also you, Joe. I think this is a difficult process, but frankly, I'm finding it to be a very deceptive process. There's been some very serious questions raised about the feasibility of roundabouts. I think the Montero Water and Sanitary District called out how their pipes are right by the road, and the cost that it would take to deal with that situation for a roundabout pretty much makes it impossible at 16th. And you mentioned earlier that a roundabout would be about $5 million. Isn't it more like double that? I mean, from your own estimates, I know in the first pass, that was the draft that only certain people got to review, the cost estimates for the roundabouts were significantly higher than what was published in this current draft that we have, because now you have excluded grading and I don't know what all, the purchase of property and all these other things, and you hadn't even at that point considered the sewer and water lines going through there. And so I feel like we're being bamboozled, honestly. And I really think that this process of it being virtual lends itself to being bamboozled. So I'm really concerned that we don't get the straight scoop. And it seems to me that you've been saying, by what you present, that a lot of this is due to Cypress Point and the hell with the rest of the community. You know, I mean, it's going to turn our community upside down. And it just really is invasive, intrusive, and not giving the whole public a chance to talk and deal with this is really heart-wrenching for us. Especially now in this time when we're going through this pandemic, we have more than enough to deal with. But I just find this whole process just really beyond what I ever anticipated would happen.
Okay. Thank you. Any comment to that, Joe?
Just to say that I recognize that the cost estimates for the roundabouts have changed and will continue to change. And with regard to the roundabout at 16th, I think there's a high likelihood that will not be in the final version of Connect the Coast Side. But the original estimate that we had for a roundabout at Cyprus was $7 million. So that's the highest estimate that I know of. Do you know of another one that was higher than that? Because I never published one that was higher than that.
No, I never saw another one other than what you published. But I'm saying.
And so the $7 million, was for a 2-lane roundabout. And in our work with Caltrans over the last couple of years, because they're not very experienced at roundabouts, their staff is sort of coming up to speed on this. And they've changed the standards that they now use for designing roundabouts. And based on those standards, we're able to build 1-lane roundabouts and serve the traffic on Highway 1, which reduces the cost.
Okay. Thank you. Earlier I asked about Sarisa, who I believe has gone off, but I think Anne is still on. Do you have a comment, Anne?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. I was very concerned when you were mentioning about the sidewalks going through Stetson Street, exactly when, I'm sorry, I can't remember which council member brought up going up and down California Avenue. I think it's Barbara. I'm very concerned about anybody with disabilities, particularly if you're in a wheelchair. How are you supposed to get to the bus stop on Etheldor if the person has to use the sidewalks through Stetson? How are they going to get to Etheldor down an extremely steep hill, or even to go up the hill? And there's no other area to really, there's no way you can go any of, I'm just trying to figure out how are you supposed to get to the bus stop?
Right. Can you tell me how people get to the, can you tell people how people in wheelchairs get to the bus stop now?
Well, that's a good question. I am not entirely.
On Carlos.
I assume Carlos. Yeah.
Carlos.
I was just going to say, most likely from Carlos.
And so generally, I agree that, you know, I walked as Barbara mentioned, I walked the California Street Hill today, and I took pictures of a few people walking on the on California on that hill, but and a few people riding bikes as well. But I agree that it's very steep and it's not handicap accessible, because the maximum slope for an accessible pathway is 8%, and if you have an 8% slope, you have to have 5-foot resting places every 30 feet, which is not feasible on that route. So that is not a handicap accessible route, and people would be forced to use Carlos, as Barbara mentioned. But I think that, you know, our long-term intention is to build a parallel trail between Carlos and Highway 1, all the way from southern Montera to Half Moon Bay. And we can't build it all at once. We've got the construction funding for the first segment. We believe that maybe now in this environment, we might actually get bids that will come in with the funding we have available, and we'll be able to build the segment that goes from Half Moon Bay city border up to Coronado in El Granada. And as soon as we get that built, we'll get busy applying for grants, designing and building the next segments. It will take some time to create that safe pedestrian environment along Carlos. But if you look at Carlos from Cyprus Point to downtown, that hill is also not accessible. The slope is greater than 8% in some places, so it wouldn't meet handicap standards either. It's the coast side's a hilly place.
Okay.
Yeah, get the fuck out.
I have a note from Teresa. You're still on.
Excuse me,
Teresa.
Yes, it's Teresa here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Teresa, go ahead. I can hear you.
I wanted to echo the concerns about the steepness of the hill on California between Etheldor and Stetson. And the other quick comment that I wanted to make was the impact of a light on Highway 1, that it would probably divert more traffic onto Sunshine Valley Road. And they're already having some problems during peak commute hours with a lot of traffic on a pretty narrow road. And so I don't know if you can include as part of your study, maybe limiting some turns there or something to help mitigate the traffic for them. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Teresa, can you explain that to me? I didn't fully understand it. You're saying that people are using Sunshine Valley Road as an alternative?
It's when Highway 1 gets busy, they divert onto Sunshine Valley Road.
I see. And they're using it to go north?
I guess in the morning they use it to go south, and in the evening they use it to go north. I think that's the biggest problem. And
so, okay, well, that's something that we can look into, ways of frustrating that use. Although I'm not entirely sure. I know that there's a program called Ways that really encourages people to.
Reading is that in country.
Okay. Well, you look at that. Sabrina Brennan, you have requested to speak.
Dictatorial governments, they're taking advantage of the pandemic to ramrod things and take away public input to stifle it.
I'm sorry, who's speaking now?
Dave, can you mute everyone? I think some people are not on mute.
This is what the supervisors are doing.
You want to say that?
Okay. So, Sabrina, if you have a comment, we're going to unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I'm going to try to be really fast. With regards to ADA access, we do not have proper ADA access in Moss Beach now. We also don't have proper crosswalks. There's a lot that needs to be done. Let's not make the problem worse. The agenda item was misleading. I thought that we would also be discussing the roundabout that has been discussed for what seems like a decade or more at Cyprus. So it would be great if Joe could give us an update on what the delays are with that and why that project hasn't already happened, given how significant the traffic problem is at Cyprus and Highway 1. And then wanted to mention that I would appreciate it if the MCC would send a letter to the Board of Supervisors and ask that development projects in the unincorporated coast side be put on pause, and that the public meetings be put on pause until public meetings where the public can actually physically attend are happening again. I don't think it's fair to do this online. And then the last comment I have is I wanted to make it really clear that The crosswalk in Moss Beach on Highway 1 is extremely dangerous. I have had more than one extremely scary experience there trying to cross with my bicycle, walking my bike, and in fact had a near-death experience there just yesterday. The problem is that the cars do not stop for that crosswalk. So by putting a crosswalk there, it's leading pedestrians and cyclists to think that it is safe to cross. However, the vehicles do not see or observe the crossing. So it really couldn't be a worse situation. Cars simply aren't stopping. It's extremely dangerous. It's misleading, and it needs to be corrected. And in fact, the crosswalk isn't even in the right location. It's at a spot on the east side of Highway 1 where cars are taking a very fast turn. So it's like they're literally turning into you as you're standing at the edge of the highway waiting to cross. There's just everything wrong with that crosswalk imaginable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Joe, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. With regard to the Cyprus roundabout, it is we have prepared actually 2 ICE analyses for it now, because the first one resulted in a 2-lane roundabout, and the second one now has us with a 1-lane roundabout. And so that is part and parcel of the agreement that we're entering into with Caltrans. So we're having them look at both California and Cyprus roundabouts, and if we continue to proceed with it, 16th as well, although I think that one is probably not going to be part of that arrangement. But it's an expensive project. So you asked why it hasn't been built yet, because it costs somewhere around $5 million, and nobody has that kind of money. And you have to go through a rigorous design process, and also entering into agreements with Caltrans in order to be able to construct something like that. So it will take some time. But Cyprus is still on the table. It's still a part of Connect the Coast side, and it's part of our planning for the Moss Beach corridor.
Okay.
And I fully understand your frustrations with the crosswalk. It was a surprise to all of us, and we're doing what we can to rectify that situation. I mean, we had a meeting with the District 4 Director, Tony Tavares, expressed our concerns. They've been stubborn about removing it, and so we're trying to work with them to make it safer.
Thank you. Dave, could you read the comment from Harold, and then we're going to close public comment?
Yes, but as I've told you several times, we also have another comment from Jen Van Despraat, so I'll also read that. Okay. This is Harold Herman's email comment. Question, will MidPen pay for all the traffic mitigation measures that will be required and were outlined in the presentation? In addition, the MWC board and general manager raised concerns in their last meeting that high-pressure sewer and water pipes are in parallel to Highway 1 and will be impacted by the proposed roundabouts, including the recently completed sewer work on 16th Street, $1 million paid by the ratepayers. Again, who will pay for the remediation measures? Do you want to answer that first, Joe, before I go on to the next one?
I don't. As far as what portion of the costs that MidPen will pay, I do not have an answer for that at this time, but I will get one.
Okay. And then Jen had had one question and a statement. The question is, can we lower the speed limit in Moss Beach on Route 1? So many local residents and families cross Route 1. We cannot wait later for 2 to 3 years. It has to happen before projects. And then the second part, as a resident, homeowner, mother, I think I speak for many of those who could not attend. The immediate community needs to know any development has a commitment to the community before any building. $5 million is clearly out of sight and likely not going to happen. A heads up to participate in these concerns clearly versus the confusion on next door and word of mouth is key. I am happy to do flyers and knock on doors. If we can have a date of discussion in advance, the health of Moss Beach depends on it.
Okay. Then at this point, I will propose to close the public comment.
Wait.
It's closed.
Wait, real quick. I mean, can we have Joe respond to the comment about the speed limit in Moss Beach?
Sure.
That is something that is set by Caltrans. They've been stubborn about reducing it in the past. We believe that the roundabouts would result in slower traffic in Moss Beach, but we also agree that slower speeds would make for a safer pedestrian environment there, and it's something that we can explore with Caltrans as part of their reconsideration of how they put this crosswalk in, and maybe it's a little bit of a bargaining chip that could be used to convince them that lowering the speed limits in Moss Beach would be desirable and appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe?
Anything else? Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Question for Joe? Yes, Joe, you're talking about the speed limit with the roundabout. Research that I've done says that, the speed of Highway 1 would be 0 if there's a car in the roundabout already. Highway 1 traffic would have to come to a complete stop if there was a car already in the roundabout. If there was no car in the roundabout and the car could travel through the roundabout, the safe speed limit would be about 15 miles an hour. What information do you have?
I don't have specific speed, but as far as like a car traveling through the roundabout, and I only have broad delay. What is the impact on overall delay of the corridor? Now, I don't have this, and I actually disagree with the point that the traffic necessarily comes to a halt. Now, there are times when it does, but generally speaking, traffic is able to flow. If there's a car in the roundabout, it doesn't mean that you can't enter. It just means that you have to judge whether you're going to collide with that car if you enter. So I think that, cars being in the roundabout, there can be more than one car in the roundabout at a time. They just can't be in the same spot.
You won't have to, it won't be 0. You just can't hit them.
Yeah, well, if the car is right in front of you, you have to stop.
Yeah, there are times when you will have to yield in the at the entrance to the roundabout, including on Highway 1, to allow the other car to pass. However, you're less likely to stop as often as you might with a signal as you would with a roundabout. So that's one of the reasons why they're more attractive, because they allow for more free flow conditions than does a signal. But there, as was discussed earlier, the signal can be designed. I think it was you who made the point about designing the signal timing in such a way as to favor Highway 1 over the cross street and pedestrian traffic to minimize the impact.
I will be asking you in the future for such an intersection that has an existing roundabout with such a heavy dominant flow. That's our unique situation. We have such a heavy, high-speed dominant flow. And with an example, the same example with a roundabout where it works well. So
the roundabout in Highway 1 in Fort Bragg, as I've told you multiple times, Dan.
I've heard
exactly
you, Dave.
like it.
Yes. No, it's not exactly like it, and it doesn't have as heavy of a flow. Clearly, there's not, or high speed.
Gentlemen, I appreciate it, but we have to move to close the meeting, and we have some things to decide on. Basically, what do we do next? Okay, so public comment is closed. Anybody else besides Dan on the council would like to ask a question? Okay.
I would like to be sure that we are able to get a copy of the presentation tonight.
That's posted on the website.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is.
Under the agenda part tonight?
Yes.
Yeah, I posted it at just about 6 o'clock tonight.
Oh, it was posted tonight.
Yes, it only came in at 5 o'clock today.
Okay. I just would like to again mention it in the future. I don't think this is fair to, because I didn't see it. So I don't think it's fair to put on presentations like this. If Connect the Coast Side's been going on for a long time, and like Joe, you've been saying you guys put a lot of work into it. I don't think you're working up on it till 5 o'clock today. So in the times of these meetings, I think it's important that we are all able to see the information that you're giving us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's good feedback, and I will say that I was unaware of this presentation until about a week ago, and so I didn't have a lot of lead time.
Okay. Okay. The fourth item on our agenda really is...
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming,
Joe.
I really appreciate all the time you've taken. And
oh yeah, and we'll be back.
Okay. Well,
thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, just
Thank you.
very shortly for this next discussion, we're going to wrap up, and your comment might be helpful there. So to the council, you know, we have 3 weeks until our next scheduled meeting.
Hey, Len, what about C and D?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Crystalline Geet, are you still on?
Yeah.
Okay, Crystalline, you are going to talk to us about Coastal Strong. The coast is clear. Do you want to speak to that?
Oh, yes, sorry, hold on. Okay. All my security was in front of the camera. So we are working on a project to have a marketing project for when the shelter in place is lifted to help people find their way back to the businesses. The marketing campaign will be geared towards locals and tourists. So it'll have a two-pronged approach, and it will consist of signs like what you have seen that will get emailed to as many local businesses as we can get our hands on, and ask them to post the signs in their window, acknowledging that they're open and can be walked into. And then we're going to have banners created for Highway 1 and Highway 92, and a digital campaign on the Visit Half Moon Bay website and the Chamber's website, and then, you know, postings next door. And the grand theme of it is that the coast is clear and that we're open for business. And so the Chamber's been asking all of the local municipalities and councils if they're okay having their logo on all of the collateral so that it's a true coast side marketing effort, not necessarily just one portion of the coast side or the other. It's for everybody.
So, Crystalline, to be clear about this is an activity or an action that would be initiated once the clear or reduction, once things begin to open up to the government declarations of status. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. So, in the next couple of weeks, we'll, once we get the final approvals of who wants to be on the signage, then we will start working on getting the banners made and all that good stuff. And then once we hear from our local county offices that it's okay for businesses to be open and how they're allowed to be open and all of that, then we'll roll it out in contingency or in conjunction with that so that they don't get posted too early, and it's when people can actually walk in.
So, Crispin, you want to know whether we would like our logo as part of the publicity that you're putting out?
Yes, please.
I think it would be great.
Okay. Dave, Dave, were you able to find the poster?
Yes, I have found it, and I've tried to share it 3 times, and for some reason, it does not want to share.
There it is.
There it is.
All right.
Okay. So if you want to, can you scroll it down to see the lower part? That's really where the names are.
I'm trying to do so, yes.
Okay. Okay.
I love it.
Okay. So Chrysalin, what Chrysalin is looking for is a motion from the council to approve putting our name on the poster. And so someone would move.
I would move to do so. I'll second.
Seconded. Okay. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, let's do a vote, Claire.
Len?
Yes.
Dan? Dan?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Barbara?
I would make a comment.
Up to Len.
Public comment.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Chris Johnson wants to make a comment on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Len. All right, so I'm not trying to be negative here, but right now what's going on in this country is a lot of discussion about what are the criteria for opening up, what does opening up mean. We don't have any timelines or deadlines. Even Governor Newsom's 6-point plan doesn't have any real timelines on it. So without trying to be a sour apple here, what I'm pointing out is that the slogan, which I get, it's a nice play on words, is right now, and I know that this isn't going live right now, but that's one of the concerns I have. I'll get to that in a second. But the slogan is dubious in terms of what it's saying. The coast is clear. Is it? And I know we're not talking to right this second, but what exactly does that mean? That there's no threat, that there's no danger, that there's no cases here? You know, I think that that's a bit of a dubious title for this program, especially with the second point I'm asking is, what is the exact criteria about when these signs would go up in windows? I think I heard Crispin say kind of like a phased approach, but that goes back to my first comment. If it's a phased approach of which, you know, they're still not doing any comprehensive testing, so we don't know who has it, who doesn't, but certain businesses are being allowed to function again with certain protocol for social distancing, that doesn't really mean that the coast is clear. And what exactly are the criteria for when this sign was going to go up? I kind of wish the council had asked these questions rather than, I know it's late, but rather than going right to an immediate vote on it with really no discussion or any objections at all. I mean, I do feel a little bad making this comment and everybody so for this poster and this program, but I think these are 2 points that should be discussed. Thank you for taking my comment.
Sure. I appreciate your comment and also the comment on not opening it to community input, which you've given. So I think the most effective thing I can do at this point is to go through the council and give each person the chance to comment relative to the point you've raised. So I'll do that. And
Crispin could answer first, Len.
Sure,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, so there currently is not a rollout plan because we don't know what the rollout plan is going to be for the state and the county. We just want to have this ready for when it is appropriate to put out. As things unfold, if it does seem like the tagline, "The coast is clear," is going to cause too much confusion or is going to be misleading, then we can absolutely revisit revisit changing it, and maybe we just go with Wave of Strength, or we come up with something else. We're just trying to be prepared with a marketing plan as soon as it's available, or as soon as it's okay to put one out. As the marketing plan unfolds, we will ask all of the different councils and municipalities that are participating with their logos on the collateral, if they're okay with the rollout as we start putting it together. So what we're mainly looking at for now is just confirmation of what municipalities and groups want to participate in the program, and that includes helping with the planning of it. The chamber will just be taking the lead on that, but I will communicate with everybody and get feedback on everything as we work on it.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Well, I'm going to go through the council. This time I'll start with Dave.
I think it's a reasonable program. I'm not worried about it sending in misleading or incorrect message. But then I will say I'm not as worried about visitors to the coast even right now as many other people do. So that may bias my opinion. That's all I have.
Thank you. Barbara?
I get Chris's point, and I agree, but I myself am in favor of the program. I think it's a good thing.
Okay. Claire?
I think we have to trust that this isn't going to be misused, and I'm hopeful that we can put that trust in it. I'm always in favor of getting us recognition anywhere, so yes, I'm in favor of this as long as it's done as presented.
Okay, understand. Michelle?
Yeah, I think Chris brought up some really good points. Personally, I don't think that the coast is going to be clear, per se, of coronavirus entirely until we have a vaccine, which is probably over a year from now. I agree with the sentiment of wanting to help out coastside businesses, and would be open to whatever the chamber is doing, putting our name on it. But I definitely think that we need to have, a final view of anything before it's published. So that being said, I'd be for participating, but yeah, with another round of review before anything goes out to the public.
Gotcha. Dan?
Yeah, Chris, I want to thank you for bringing that up. Early on, I think I read somewhere that it was, once everything was settled in. But, hey, settled in, right? What does that really mean? Who defines it? I agree with Michelle. I think that just wanted to hear confirmation from Chrislyn that every single member of the Midcoast Community Council, you will get confirmation from the complete council before it actually moves forward. This is a little bit of an early on, kind of getting your ducks in play there ahead of time so that you're ready. But absolutely, everything's changing, day by day. We all know it. So we're going to get a final okay. And thank you, Chris, for really kind of, bringing concern with this, because it is concerning.
Okay. So, Chrislyn, I have a question. This is more on the wording side. I believe that the word clear there is extremely strong, but the word open is more flexible. So if it said the coast side is open, I think that's more in keeping with the condition we're likely to have.
Okay, yeah, that's a great great alternative, and I will note that. And then, and then as we start actually fleshing out the particulars of a rollout of this and checking the wording, then we'll definitely bring it back to you guys for like a final approval. But it is helpful.
I appreciate your initiative in trying to take this step forward while we're gathering ourselves. Okay. So I guess what I have then, I think that the vote ended with a unanimous approval with the understanding that we would review it before it goes out.
No, it wasn't. We never finished calling the roll.
Where were we, Claire?
Well, we probably should start over since we have further discussion.
We'll start over. We'll start with Dan this time.
What are we voting on? Let's restate it.
We're voting on approving the program. We've made both a suggestion about the wording and the concern that we review it before the actual go live occurs.
Okay, if we're changing the motion, the original person to make the motion should either amend it or withdraw it and make a new motion.
Okay.
I made it, and I'm going to withdraw it.
Okay.
What's the new wording?
Would somebody like to take a cut at the revised wording?
Kristlyn, are we ready for that?
Well,
it's not just us.
I don't think we're rewording the poster right now. I think we're moving to approve participation in the program.
Based on Glenn's comments earlier.
Contingent on a final review.
Okay.
So I will move to participate in the program.
Okay.
My second.
Okay. Claire, do the roll.
Lynn?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
I vote yes. 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristlyn.
Thank you, Kristlyn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristlyn.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'd like to make a point of order. I just have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Barbara. Mm-hmm.
On item 4B, did we ever come to any, all of a sudden we moved on to the next item. Did we ever decide, are we going to ask the county to hold off on these meetings, or what are we doing?
4B was an informational item only. We clearly got a lot of information. We had a chance to make comments and give feedback. But to take an action step, we would have to do that at another meeting, so that will come when we discuss our next steps.
Can we do a straw poll?
It says provide feedback to San Mateo County on plans presented. Wouldn't
And
that
I
be
think
doing that?
We were doing that throughout the meeting. This was basically set up to see the current look as what was there. Well, Joe was not complete, and we did not get it fully posted. I think given the pace that things are potentially trying to move at, this gave the council a best view of where some things are at. We've raised the question of, one, whether virtual meetings are appropriate at all, and two, the timing of them and some of the details. And we can make comment upon that as an action that we can discuss and review at a next meeting.
Speaking of appropriate, I think it would be appropriate to do a straw poll.
I don't think it would. I mean, either we're going to take an action we would send forward.
Early on, just get
What's that?
I think we should put it on the next agenda.
Yeah. No. Next.
Okay, if the council doesn't want to do a straw poll, I'm okay with having it on the next agenda.
Okay. So the question on next agendas is,
what about Part D?
Well, I'm basically dropping Part D because we've run over, and Part D led to a request to have a special meeting to discuss these points. The most important of which is looking at our overall priorities as well as our considerations on action relative to the things happening in the area of transportation. And as Joe was clear about, and it's clearly there, you have the Connect the Coast side, which is a long-term project trying to come to a conclusion with a document that would satisfy the comprehensive transportation management plan. And you have Cypress Point trying to address issues that have led to some revisions of discussion of transportation or roadway mitigations. And, and we have a virus pandemic going on which restricts us to virtual meetings. So I think we've heard enough to know both the problems and issues as well as community input. And I would like to see us schedule a special meeting on May the 6th, which would be the Wednesday before our next regular schedule.
Oh, wait, point of order. We do still have agenda item 4D. If we're dropping the agenda, we need to have a motion to drop it from the agenda.
Okay. So since that was my item, I'll make a, do I need to move it or just say I'm removing it from the agenda, Dave?
Now there needs to be a motion to modify the agenda, and we need to vote on it.
So I'd like to have a motion to remove agenda item D.
I move that we table agenda item D.
Second. Somebody?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Who was that, Barbara?
Yeah.
Barbara, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So could you call
Lynn?
the roll, Claire? Yes.
Lynn? Dan?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Dave?
Okay, I'll go along.
Michelle?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll vote yes. So we'll table that.
Okay. On council activity, anyone have items there? Do you want to give any permit log update, Claire?
Did we decide on a special meeting or not?
No, we're coming to that under future agendas.
Oh, okay.
So we're on council.
I did our monthly report at the Half Moon Bay City Council meeting yesterday, and Michelle and I have been at least sporadically attending the county COVID-19 updates 3 times a week.
Okay. Anything else?
I got an announcement.
What's that?
I got an announcement.
Yes, Dan.
So, the Coast Guard helicopter has been flying at a very low altitude and circling over El Granada, at least. I don't know where else they're doing this, but I've heard a lot of complaints. Saw some on Nextdoor. Unfortunately, they were some of the concerns were really laughed at. But anyway, that's my announcement. Is the Coast Guard orange helicopter is flying? I'd say at 300 feet, 400 feet above the residential neighborhood of El Granada, which I have witnessed at least 5 times, approximately 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
Dan, I will never criticize the Coast Guard flying around trying to find people.
We don't know that they're looking for anybody. It's at nighttime with no searchlight. I really do not think they're looking for anybody.
Dan,
somebody that got swept
Dan, is this information or is it part of a future agenda item? I don't
Pretty
know.
much on the record, Len. On the record, the Coast Guard is flying at low altitudes. Number of not one day, numerous days in a row in sequence, typically around.
Okay.
Afternoon, early afternoon, late afternoon.
You want it entered in the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that we should put that on the agenda to find out.
We're coming to that next, Dan.
What the hell's going on?
Dan, we're coming to that next.
Okay. I had a brief report as well then.
Okay, Dave?
I attended last night's Half Moon Bay City Council COVID-19 study session, made a comment as a private citizen at that. There, as Harvey summarized, there was a strong push from a lot of the council to start having the sheriffs issue tickets instead of warnings. And Captain Lopez was going to go back to the sheriff's department for more advice on that. I also attended the Harbor District meeting on the 15th, which included a very good presentation on the Cyprus Beach pilot project and moving ahead with that. There's some issues with eelgrass mitigation, but that all looks like it's pretty well in hand. I was waiting for the Resource Conservation District presentation on the next steps for the biofilms underneath the commercial area of Princeton, but unfortunately the meeting turned rather unpleasant, and so I dropped off the meeting before that. But it was the Resource Conservation District did an excellent presentation that is on the Harbor District website for anybody that's interested in that. That's all I've got.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So for our last item under future agendas, I think the first thing to consider is whether we want to hold a meeting before our next scheduled meeting, which is May 13th. That would be on Wednesday, May 2nd. And if we want to make any action that would be effective in passing something that would speak with respect to the scheduling that Joe has proposed for it to connect the coast side, I think we would have to meet then. If we want to just wait till our next regular meeting on the 13th, then we can pick it up at that point. So, like,
I do feel that I would like to ask the Board of Supervisors to delay projects, as has been mentioned. I also hate to have a special meeting. So I'd like to hear what other people think.
So
I don't want to have a special meeting.
What's that?
I don't think we need a special meeting. I think we should be able to take care of what we need to at the normal meeting.
Well,
right?
the normal meeting is on May 13th, and Joe is planning to start his next meeting on May 16th, and that seems there's no time at all there. So if we wanted to make any kind of an effective pitch, we should either meet.
Well, that's why we should have done it tonight. So we could say we'd like them to hold off on it instead of.
It wasn't on the agenda. We couldn't have done it tonight.
Well,
I think what's being said is the process is going too fast.
Well,
so if it takes a special meeting to just make a vote to send a letter saying slow the hell down under these circumstances, I'm for it.
I'm not even sure it would pass, though.
So, something to consider is that Joe said this would have to go to the Board of Supervisors probably, since they made it a statement of direction to all county departments. The board meets on the 5th of May and the 19th of May. So we could affect the 5th. Meet on the 13th. We could perhaps get something in front of them on the 19th.
That's why I specifically asked Joe to check in with the Board of Supervisors to see if they're okay with moving forward with a known situation of lower participation. I think we should get our letter together, directed to the Board of Supervisors as soon as possible.
As soon as we can
I personally don't. I want to state my opinion here too. I actually don't agree with that assumption that it's going to be lower participation. I think you get different participation, which is a problem. Personally, I would be more available for an online meeting than I would be for an in-person meeting right now. And I think there are several other people that are in that same situation. I'm not opposed to holding the meetings, and actually wouldn't really be in favor of a letter of saying don't do this until we can have in-person meetings, because I think it's going to be a really long time before we're able to have that, and I don't want it to just be like a tactic to stall everything. I would be in favor personally of like having the meetings but not having decisions made. I don't think that these online meetings could completely replace in-person meetings, and that those should be like the end-all be-all, like, then they're like, oh, we gathered feedback, let's move on. So, and I don't want to hold a special meeting just for this.
Well, tonight's a perfect example of what's wrong with the process, okay? There was not sufficient time for the community to digest the information that was put out just this morning. So, yes, we do need to put a complete stop on this whole process. That's my opinion, because the community does not deserve to be sidestepped and to be left in the dark. There's too many other things going on in the lives of the community right now.
I like the way Michelle phrased it. I think there is no really big downside to having these online meetings. But what the downside is that the planners would then assume that all the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed, when we really don't think they have.
So I want to interrupt for a second. Joe LeClaire, are you still on? Or has he left his computer on? Joe, are you there?
I believe he dropped off when we finished that agenda item.
Didn't log out. So
I did not drop off.
Okay,
I'm so wrong. I'm sorry, Joe.
Okay.
No. I just, yeah.
I have a question for you. Over a month back, when you began to discuss your plans for the Connect the Coastside review meetings, and this was actually still in the era when it was expected those would be live meetings, the schedule called for 2 or 3 live meetings, and that would be followed by a meeting of the MCC to hold a vote on Connect the Coastside. Okay, so my question is, in holding these virtual meetings, are you looking, when they are finished, within, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, to ask the MCC to hold a meeting in which that would speak to what's been presented?
What we're going to do with these online meetings after we hold them is to make an assessment of where we stand, because this is a first time for us too. We've never conducted this kind of outreach in this manner. So we are going to make an assessment of where we stand after we have conducted these 3 planned virtual meetings, and we'll see whether we need to conduct more. And if we conclude that that's the case, then we will have more meetings. So I understand everyone's concern that we're going to rush through 3 online meetings, that people will have very limited opportunity to express their opinions, and will then go to a final decision on Connect the Coastside. That's not our intention.
Just real quick, will you check in with MCC before that final decision is made?
Oh, absolutely. And we want the MCC's recommendation on the Connect the Coastside plan before we go to the Planning Commission. So our concept is that we will probably have a workshop before the Planning Commission before we have a sort of a formal consideration for action. And who knows, maybe we'll have 2 workshops before the Planning Commission before they make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Preceding that, we will have a number, whatever number it is, of public meetings that we need in order to engage the public and have an adequate opportunity for people to participate and express their opinion. I think that the survey has been a tremendous opportunity for public engagement. It is at a high level. It's not at the detailed level that many of you are working at, because you're much more engaged with the issues that arise on the coast side. And most people are not going to get to that level. They're not going to be able to engage with Connect the Coast Side at a really detailed level. So the survey gives us a really good read on that sort of broader level of input. And if we can get 500 or 600 responses, that will be tremendous in terms of, because not only are people giving us just sort of answers to multiple choice questions, the detailed questions that people are answering, we will share all the the results from the survey with you, and there's a lot of rich data in there. But that aside, we will do the public outreach that's necessary in order to ensure that everyone understands what's in Connect the Coastside, and whether they agree with it or not, I can't say anything about that. But at least we want to make sure that the public understands what's in Connect the Coastside.
So, just to be clear, Joe, the survey that you're speaking of is the same survey Common Knowledge has put together in coordination with the MCC. There's only one survey out that the county is passing around.
That's correct. Yeah, you're right. That was a partnership between the county, Connect the Coastside. Between the county, Common Knowledge, and the MCC.
Yeah, see, I never know. It's news to me tonight that it's in addition to connected also with the Connect the Coastside. But just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Okay. So, Joe, if I look at what was framed when you came here to this meeting, there was basically the outcome was the feedback on to the San Mateo County on the plans presented. I think what you're saying specifically is you've told us you have plans to do 3 virtual meetings, 2 in May and 1 in June, going through the first week of June, and that at that point, what I just heard you say is effectively then you would convene further study sessions to assess where you're at, and that would be then an opportunity both for more detailed study by the council as well as comment. But there is no longer a near-term plan that has a specific date marked for a final recommendation before it goes to the Planning Commission. You just want to run these 3 virtual meetings and then basically assess where they got things to.
That's correct. And then we may decide that we need more virtual meetings. I don't know whether and when, as Michelle pointed out, that we're going to be able to meet face to face. I'm based on what I see, it seems like it'll be some time before we can convene 100 people in a room.
Okay. So, and I think your spirit, Michelle, was that you would be in favor of such meetings, looking at those to then give a data point to see where we're at in our learning about Connect the Coastside.
That's correct.
Okay. So again, then I think the option, I heard very little enthusiasm for a special meeting before our next regular meeting on the 13th. And I think given the feedback Joe has given, if we don't do that, then we would go forward sort of looking for, he got from the community a large amount of, besides the feedback that we really were not pleased with virtual meetings, feedback on particular aspects and details that relate to Connect the Coastside. And so in that sense, and I think you tried, very hard to give us your honest reaction to all of those. So
Len, would you do me a favor and just take another roll call, please? Just take another roll call, because there was a lot of information passed around early on. Yes.
We haven't put a particular point for a roll call. So I guess the particular point I would like to get the feedback from the council on would be either we will have our next meeting on May 13th and have given Joe feedback on the planned virtual meetings, but not do any further action formally from the council to express concern, but have the expectation that those will be at more of a midpoint for the review.
Third time I was disconnected when I was speaking tonight. It's third time.
Dan, let's just try to.
Free conference call website disconnected me in the middle of my conversation. Third time tonight.
Okay, I heard you.
So can I complete my thought there,
I'm not sure what your question is, but go ahead.
So, yes, it's clear that members of the council showed sentiment that they were not interested in a special meeting. Since then, there was a lot of discussion. So my request is that we do just a quick roll call to see that we do not want to do a special meeting after all the discussion, and knowing that on May 16th there's a scheduled meeting, virtual meeting for the Connect the Coast site.
In effect, a straw vote, but okay. So you'd like to just poll us and see if the council is supportive of taking that next step as far as meetings go?
Yes, please.
Okay. So does anybody want to repeat what we're going to take the straw vote on? No. Okay. So I see the straw vote as we'll have our next meeting on May 13th. And we will understand that the county will proceed with the virtual meetings starting on May 16th, with the expectation that those do not then immediately lead to decisions, but just an evaluation of what's been the learning to date with those virtual meetings.
Well, even if we met a special meeting and said, please don't have the virtual meetings, they would have them anyway. It's such a small, fine...
I can't hear you, Claire. Cannot hear you. There's some background noise.
Anyway,
whoever's making noise, please mute yourself.
I think it might be you, Dan.
There's no noise going on in my house right now.
There.
Much better now.
So, I'll start with you, Dan. What's your comment, or what's your straw poll vote?
My vote is that we make a special meeting to say that the MCC is in favor of postponing the connected coast-side meetings due to a known lack of large participation within the community.
Okay. Michelle?
No.
So you're in favor, just wait till we have the next regular meeting, and with the understanding we'll move ahead with the virtual meeting, the county will.
Correct.
Okay. Claire?
I'm unmuting myself. I'm opposed to the special meeting. I don't think it would make any difference.
So you said that was no on the special meeting?
That's correct.
Okay. Barbara?
No.
Dave?
No.
I also go with no. So with that said, I think we will propose we adjourn, and our next meeting will be on the 13th. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Sorry, I know we're running late. Just a quick question on that one. We talked about potentially switching to Zoom for conference calls, and I just wanted to ask if we needed to approve the $15 a month budget item for that.
Yes, we would, because it would be more than $50 a year. So it's more than a $50 item.
It's not a year-long commitment, though. Just
no, I think we can do it without cost there. I mean, so it could either be paid by us. So I think it's.
If you believe you can cancel it after 1 or 2 months, then yeah, we don't need a.
Yeah.
It just needs to be.
I think it's month to month. I'll double check.
Okay. So, I mean, in terms of deciding that, I think that would be you and Dave and I would have to discuss. I mean, it's going to be our effort to do it. But I don't know.
It's at least worth telling the entire council, and thank you for bringing it up, Michelle, that item is under discussion.
Okay. The item Dave is referring to is whether to hold the next meeting on the 13th with Zoom technology. In order to do that, I think Michelle and I would have to put that effort in. I think Dave has done more than his share to move it forward, and I think a lot of progress has been made. I guess the question I have to you, Dave, is whether you're opposed to it in any event or opposed to it if it takes effort on your part.
I'm only opposed to it if it takes extra effort on my part. I'm not opposed in general. It will be interesting to see if people like Dan and Karen, and I think there was one other person who connected and disconnected multiple times.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see if that's different.
I don't want to prolong this. I'm sorry. There's been a lot of problems with Zoom meetings being intruded upon by basically trolls, and I think they're resolving that by giving people unique sign-in links, but you have to sign up ahead of time, and I think that would limit people.
Well, I think a large number of government meetings. A large number of government meetings, including most of the other coastside councils, are using Zoom, and I don't consider it a near-term risk, but
maybe it's mostly AA meetings.
Yeah, you cannot have a private number for a government Zoom meeting, so that level of security doesn't work. You have to have a moderator who will do the same thing I've been doing with this meeting, which is staying on top of people, handling them in chat, and ultimately locking them out if they're actually bombing the meeting.
Hey, Dave. Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, just for the record, right now my screen's clear. I'm not... I guess I'm indifferent as far as where to move forward. I just wanted to, I know it's frustrating because there's some unknown reasons why my screen was having, a distortion, and unknown reasons as to why I was dropped 6 times tonight and I had to re-enter the meeting. But, I mean, who's to say that we switch to Zoom, we don't have the same problems? I don't know. I'm just saying,
we will have that problem with some people. Every Zoom meeting I've been on has one or more people who have that kind of problem. It's just inherent.
So it's more important to talk about, what are possible solutions to the problems.
I think the council. The question I just want to put forward is either Michelle and I will spend effort to put it on Zoom on the 13th, or we'll stay with what we have. Dave has indicated he's done good work and he doesn't want to put more time in there. I guess, Michelle, are you interested in doing that?
Yes, I'm open to doing that.
So that's what Michelle and I would do it, and if we feel it looks promising, we would then have to at least have one individual session with each council member, just to.
I don't think so.
What's that?
No, I think most of it. Yeah, Claire's on the county meetings on Zoom. I've used Zoom. Has anyone not used Zoom in the last month? Barbara?
Dan?
Anyone else? Dan?
I've been on Zoom.
So I can have individual sessions with Barbara, and if you feel like you want to do that too, Dan, I can do that with you.
Okay.
I think everyone else has practiced.
So this isn't...
We'll just reach out via email and see if there's interest, but I want to make sure everyone's set up before we do it if we go with that route.
For sure. Okay, then you and I will discuss it a bit further and then confirm to the council if we go ahead. Okay. I think with that, we're ready to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Yes, there we go. Okay. Thanks for the time, everybody. I know it's a long meeting, and we'll catch you at the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Be safe.
Thank you.
Night all.
Good night.